Welcome to Paradigms at paradigms.life, the radio show and podcast that brings you inspiring people with visions of a viable future for life on Earth that includes humans. Hi, I'm Baruch, host of Paradigms. Glad to be here with you. Thanks for listening. Really glad you're here. We've got a very wonderful guest on this episode, as we always do. And this guy is a musician, he's a singer, he's a songwriter, he's a storyteller. And he really has some interesting points of view about how we can learn from the past and why he tells his stories. He'll talk to us about that. We're also going to be listening to music from his new record and a little bit from his previous album, because why not? So let's meet my guest now on this episode of Paradigms. Bart Moore, welcome to Paradigms.
Thank you very much.
I'm very glad to talk with you. I have been enjoying your music and reading about you, and I think we have some interesting stuff to talk about. Before we get into talking about the new record and a little bit about the old record, Curse of Las Lunas, old record, the first record, Graveyards, Wind, and War, I'd love to just learn a bit about you as a person, how you grew up, how you got into playing music, and sort of your inspirations.
Yeah, well, I grew up in the Benton Harbor, St. Joseph area of Michigan, the Twin Cities of Michigan, which is down in the southwest corner by the Indiana border and right on Lake Michigan. Grew up in Benton Harbor until I was 13. Benton Harbor is somewhat famous or infamous for being the per capita murder capital of America for a city of population less than 15,000, which is quite an achievement, I guess. But it was actually a fun place to grow up. And the district that I grew up in, Fairplain, was a fun place to grow up. About 40 square miles, and we had enough kids to field about a dozen Little League teams. So I guess it was the baby boom. 1960s, the Beatles exploded upon the world. So everybody wanted either a guitar or a drum set. So my dad bought me a Gibson J50 guitar for my 8th birthday. It's a thing of beauty. I still have it. And I signed up for guitar lessons. I took lessons from a guy who taught me how to read notes and how to transpose notes so that I could play songs on a guitar from the score. And so I'm doing this, and meanwhile, I'm watching the Who jumping around on the Smothers Brothers show and blowing up their instruments. And I'm thinking, this looks a lot more fun than what I'm doing. I'm playing Starride Stella and that old Black Magic, on my guitar. And so I got rid of the guitar lessons and started learning to play the guitar by just listening to people that I liked and admired and trying to mimic what they do. 1972, Thick as a Brick was released, Jethro Tull.
Great album.
And that was life-changing for me. And I spent the next 5 years trying to mimic Ian Anderson's very eccentric acoustic guitar stuff, this combination of intermittent strumming, and I still use that quite a bit. But after that, spent another 3 years unlearning it so I could actually play a steady rhythm and play with other people. I had a band in high school. We were atrocious. I moved to East Lansing after high school and kind of nominally attended classes in college, but mostly, visited the music clubs around town and played. I had an acoustic duo with another woman. After that, I was able to graduate and just scrape by with enough credits to get a degree in journalism, a career that I never really pursued. So I packed up and went west to seek my fame and fortune, and played for many years in bands on the West Coast in kind of new wave and grunge bands. It was very high volume stuff. And we played the clubs in the Bay Area. And the clubs are very small, and the music is very loud. So in order to forestall terminal deafness, I gave that up and turned back to playing acoustic music And my wife and I moved back to Michigan, moved to Grand Ledge, which is just outside Lansing, and have been there for quite some time. But then commenced to establishing myself as an acoustic act in the clubs around Lansing. Did the first CD that you mentioned, Curse of Los Lunas, a few years ago. And then after that, started writing and recording the material for the new CD, Graveyards, which is the one that's just been released. So that's the sort of Cliff Notes version.
I'm talking with Bart Moore, who's just released a new record, Graveyards, Wind and War. We'll be back with more of this conversation, but let's hear some of the music now. Starting with the first track from the new record, it's called The Third Day. Bart Moore on Paradigms at paradigms.life.
We thundered out artillery, but Hancock didn't yield. Our flags in their cases in the Pennsylvania field. The Corps commander sitting there, head buried in his hands. That long Yankee line, standing on the ridge, looking down. All drinking coffee, standing on that high, lovely ground. The battle now is joined, it's the time of our lives. America, she's hanging in the balance like a prize. That long gray line, moving across the field like a snake. The cannoneers thunder, balls whistle, green earth shakes. Ooh, there's fire in the sky, the angel of the Lord, flames streaming from her eye. Balls and shells fill the air. Seconds later, Lang's brigade in a flash wasn't there. Armistead and Kemper gone, metal echoes, rusty shadows of a time long gone. Johnny Rebel met his doom. The Pennsylvania rocks are a stone for his tomb. Faulkner weeps, Longstreet hangs his head. That goddamn Bobby Lee, I wish he'd stayed in bed. That long Yankee line, standing on the ridge looking down. All drinking coffee, standing on that high, lovely ground. Hey, the devil took the day. The Lord left the land in her long silver sleigh. And the angel with the sword doesn't love us anymore. Left the room, slammed the door. There's a devil on the hill, selling Hail Marys later. I can hear him howling still. There's a devil on the land, all he touches with his hand, withers water turns to sand. Armistead and Kemper gone, metal echoes, rusty shadows of a time long gone. Johnny Rebel met his doom. The Pennsylvania rocks are a stone for his tomb. There's a devil on the hill, 7 Hail Marys later. I can hear him howling still. I can hear him howling still. I can hear him howling still. die. We have no country 'cause our country died. Got no power, got no home in this world. Tuberculosis trumpet wails in the night. The trumpet player plays a lullaby. I will go where the wind blows. I will go where the wind blows. I go where the wind blows. That's where I'll go. I will go where the wind blows. I lie awake in the 5 o'clock light. I hear the dogs and doves. I hear the bats and kites. The west wind howls in a crazy man's dream. The magic band greets the dawn's early light. The captain sings a lullaby. I will go where the wind blows. I will go where the wind blows. I go where the wind blows. That's where I'll be. I will go where the wind blows. Anywhere it blows, there's me. Where the wind blows, I will go where the wind blows. I go where the wind blows. I will go where the wind blows. I go where the wind blows.
You just heard a song called I Will Go Where the Wind Blows. And before that, we heard The Third Day from Bart Moore's new record, Graveyards, Wind, and War. It's great music, huh? Really has a wonderful musicianship, and the songs are a bit haunting, I would say. Okay, now we're going to get back to my conversation with Bart Moore and learn a bit about why these story songs. Your songs are stories. A lot of them are historical, and I'm interested in what attracts you to that, the fascination with that, and why tell these stories.
Well, I like to write about topical things. I'm not comfortable writing introspectively about myself. I've just never been that kind of writer. So things that really move me, historical things. One of the songs on there is kind of a scary story about an evil spirit. There's one that's a trip through a graveyard that was kind of influenced by Neil Gaiman's book, Graveyards. One that's just a substance-fueled hallucinatory thing about the pterodactyl. I like to use lyrics in the same way that somebody like Miles Davis might use his trumpet, or Bill Monroe might use his mandolin as another, almost like another instrument that functions in the song. And so I strive to write interesting, kind of poetic, colorful lyrics. That's kind of my niche, I guess.
It's a little bit like consulting an historical document to listen to this record, because I feel like, it's not that the music is particularly old-timey, but there's an old-timey feel. It takes us back. And, the picture of you on the cover wearing a Union soldier's hat. And it made me want to ask you, partly because of where you live, even though it's sort of ironic that it's a thing where you live, I wanted to talk to you about people's fascination with the United States Civil War, because we're still living it out in some ways, even more so than we have for quite some time. And I remember when I went to college, I went to Goddard College in Vermont. There was a guy there who was a teacher, and his whole thing was Civil War. And he looked like a Civil War guy. He wore old-timey clothes. He went to reenactments, and he was a scholar of the period. And he was utterly fascinated. My family was not in North America at that time. We were busily escaping Cossacks from killing us in Russia and Eastern Europe. So that wasn't a thing I grew up with. But where you live, it's a thing. And I wanted to ask you your thoughts about it and your understanding of that fascination.
Well, I think you're very correct in that we are still living out unresolved things from the Civil War. And the Civil War, at the time, it was said, well, this war is the result of things that we didn't resolve when we created our Constitution and when we fought our Revolutionary War. We left this huge issue of slavery, this elephant in the room that it's always been in American history. We left this unresolved. And the Civil War, ostensibly resolved much of that. But as you see, there's still much of that unresolved today. Historians from Bruce Catton to David Blight to Shelby Foote all say that you can't understand America as it is now without some understanding, some examination of the Civil War.
That makes a lot of sense. It seems like what we're doing now isn't trying to understand it as much as we're acting it out.
Yeah, absolutely. The idea of the war being a war to end slavery, the Civil War, on the one hand is a simplification. There certainly were other issues. On the other hand, as the historian Barbara Fields makes clear, the issue of slavery. That's what gave the war its meaning. That's what gave it its theme. And it did have the result of eradicating slavery. The 13th Amendment, which was a direct outgrowth of the end of the Civil War, did illegalize and eradicate slavery, indentured servitude in every state of the Union. But the underpinnings of slavery, the attitudes and the prejudices and the racism behind that live on. And unfortunately, they're very much prevalent in our politics and in our society today.
Now, you and I are both of a certain age at this point. We're not spring chickens. We're in the probably second or even third of our lives. So we've lived through a whole bunch of different things. The civil rights movement in the 60s, and then all of what feels like, in a way, backlash to all these different liberation movements, liberation of people of color, women, LGBTQ, et cetera, et cetera. So the concept, the phenomenon of backlash, that there could be a move forward and then a snap back, to me says change is scary. People fear change. And so too much change, I'm putting air quotes, too fast, because I don't think it's too fast, but for some people it felt too fast, is difficult for them to metabolize. What do we do with that? I mean, not that you're going to know, but maybe you do.
No, I don't. I think that is the abiding question, because that fear that you referred to, that fear of change, that, if other folks who had been kind of locked out of the system now have access to it, doesn't that encroach upon the people that have had access to that system? And now you've got white grievance, you've got classes of people that are seeing this encroachment, this backlash against immigrants. I mean, immigrants have been the fuel of the engine of the country. And, now there's this backlash against immigrants. There's this, view of minorities as now they're a privileged class. And, the politicians and the powers that be that are able to exploit these fears do so brilliantly. And they do so at our expense.
In the next part of my conversation with Bart Moore, we're going to be talking about humans. But first, we're going to hear some more music. Here's a song from Bart Moore's new record, Graveyards, Wind and War. This one's called Graveyard.
Winter's dead, the night's all done. Graveyard meets the vernal sun. Swallowtails chase baseball days. Morning noise and golden rays. Red-tailed hawks and blue jays scream. Tombstones weathered gray and green. Oblong rocks like severed heads. Shrieking crows awake the dead. People come and talk to me in this graveyard. Sorry, man, you're not even alive. You are long gone, long, long gone. Born in 1891, 114 years got done. Somehow he stayed alive till 2005. Born Ohio, 1916. Cannons blazed, the corn was green. Climbed that rain barrel, looked like fun. Died in 1921. People come, they talk to me in this graveyard. Sorry, girl, you're not even alive. You are long gone, long, long gone. Born in Lubbock, Texas, hell. Played the fool but married well. Saw the rebel cause was good. Fought and died with John Bell Hood. Pennsylvania marksman shot him from a tree. Died in 1863. In the devil's den he died alone. Moss and fungus cover his stone. When we're gone, don't bury us in some graveyard. Scatter us to the breezes off the North Pier. Scatter us to the fields. Scatter us on the lawn. We are long gone, long gone, long, long gone. Down or live in fear. They always know when Marcelena's near. There's a sharp smell of grenadine and hydrogen sulfide when she's near. One time when she assumed she was alone, we watched her dig and burn her sister's bones. My mother always said it's best to never know where Marcelena's going. And Marcelena told me how she prayed to Mother Night. How under a cloak of darkness she grew wings and then took flight. She told me how she killed her prey and ate it from a bowl. That's the way that Marcelena rolls. I guess I wasn't more than 9 or 10. Saw her in the backyard with her men. My mother always said it's best to never know where Marcelena's been. Marcelena, Marcelena, I can hear you from my window laughing like a ghost out in the rain. The children of the town all live in dread when Marcelena talks inside their head. They never realize just what she was till 10 years after she was dead. Marcelina talks, but never speaks. She lives inside the wounded and the weak. She travels in that no man's land that lies between Hell's Ditch and Heaven's Peak. And Marcelina told me how she prayed to Mother Night, how under a cloak of darkness she grew wings and then took flight. She told me how she killed her prey and ate it from a bowl. That's the way that Marcelina rose. That's the way that Marcelina rose. She rose. She rose. Out of lesson nest and he dove into Paris on a rush. Painting wallpaper didn't get it done, so he got strung out on the easel brush. Beautiful world, empire of lights, keys to the field in his hand. Everybody listen to the story, world of wonders that you drew. The day that I saw glory is the day that I saw you. What's wrong with a train coming out of a fireplace? See it every morning of the day. Companions of fear with their bronze owl faces, growing from the ground, from the mountaintop down. You took mundane, wedded to profane, infinity and limits hand in hand. Everybody listen to the story, world of wonders that you drew. The day that I saw glory is the day that I saw you. Beautiful world, empire of lights, keys to the field in his hands. Everybody listen to the story, world of wonders that you drew. The day that I saw glory is the day that I saw you. The human condition is a bright blue sky over cities buried in the night. False mirror sees an eye behind the sky, thereby describes the lie. Weird all his life, married to his wife, only 69 when he died. Everybody listen to the story, world of wonders that you drew. The day that I saw glory is the day that I saw you. Everybody listen to the story, world of wonders that you drew. The day that I saw glory is the day that I saw you. The day that I saw glory is the day that I saw you.
Okay, that song you just heard is called Magritte, the Day That I Saw Glory. And that is from Bart Moore's album, Curse of Las Lunas. Before that, we heard Marcelina, and we started out with Graveyard, both of those from the new record, Graveyards, Wind and War. Bart's an interesting fellow. How are you enjoying the music and what he's saying? We'd love to see your comments. And now we're going to get back to my conversation with Bart Moore. You're listening to Paradigms at paradigms.life. In your life, I know you've done a bunch of different things. Music's not the only thing you've done. You work with humans. What works when you're dealing with scared people? What have you seen work?
Well, usually when people are confronted with irrefutable truth, that tends to work. What is so difficult is getting that irrefutable truth in front of people, getting past Fox News, getting past all the lies and rhetoric and crap that's out there on social media, on Facebook and on Twitter. Mark Twain had a great quote, "The truth is a precious commodity, use it sparingly." The truth now has become kind of a fungible thing where, there is no truth. There are only people's versions of the truth, which is something that Dashiell Hammett believed back in the 30s and 40s when he was writing. And so to sift through all that and, to get in front of people and say, look, here is irrefutable evidence that what you believe is wrong, that is a very difficult thing. It's a very difficult thing now in that nobody, there aren't 3 TV networks. There's no fatherly Walter Cronkite telling us, this is the news of the day and these are the facts. We don't have that anymore. It's a byproduct of our internet, of our very open social media and society.
Yeah, no one ever yelled at him, fake news.
Right.
He also was it's a great example. Cronkite was a person who had this deep integrity and commitment to telling the truth.
Right.
And it wasn't considered a lucrative step on the way to some kind of stardom, being a newscaster, which is what it is now.
That's a great point. That is a great point.
The stories that you turn into songs, the history, the memories, you're telling us something. Through all of these, you're giving us a message. What are you wanting us to get?
Baruch, I want your attention. I'm an only child. And I think the way that I try to grab that attention and hold it is to hold your interest, hold the listener's interest, and make the music and the songs so compelling that you're not going to just turn it off and go to the next thing. Because, there are a million artists out there, and there's 10 million records and recordings and things like that out there at any given time. And you really got to cut through that. So it's my means of captivating and of entertaining.
Now, one of the things that I think is interesting about being especially a performing artist is the element of permission involved. And I ask people about this a lot because I think there are more people not giving themselves permission to express themselves than who give themselves permission. How did you give yourself permission?
For me, that's not an easy thing. I have to come up with material that I think is extraordinarily good and figure that if it can pass my screen, then most people will agree. I may be fooling myself, but that's kind of where I come from with that. I've been doing this a long time, so I think I've earned that permission. But that's just my perspective.
Well, it's different with everyone. And I ask people this question often because I find the answers fascinating. For some people, it's like, oh, that was a non-issue. For some people, it's like, that was a really big deal. And it's still a really big deal. Who am I to get up on that stage?
Absolutely.
I think it's a piece of our human journey to discover what we have to offer and to offer it. And that can be scary. It's like, what if they don't like it? What if they throw tomatoes at me? What if they tell me I'm garbage?
Those thoughts eat at me and haunt me 24/7, Baruch.
And yet you persist, you progress, you keep going.
I do. I get just enough affirmation to keep playing. So
no, it's good. Well, and I love to just highlight that with people so that other people can be inspired by that and do the same thing. You know, we've all got something to contribute, at least one something.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And on the other thing I fight is, I hear other artists that are brilliant. And on the one hand, I love the music. I listen to Rupert Waits, and on the one hand, I love the music. On the other hand, like, boy, do I measure up to this? Can I compete with this? There's a kind of cool thing going.
We'll be back with the final part of my conversation with Bart Moore after we hear a bunch more music. We're going to start this set out with the title track from his first album, Curse of Las Lunas. Here we go.
The stranger wrote it down, the sun was a yellow rose. Amarillo to come carry Santa Rose. In the land of Comanche blood and tears, about where Highway 40 would be built in 80 years. The stranger rode until he saw the lights of town. Felt that searing pain as the sun was going down. The sky was lighted by a crystal evening moon. He knew he'd never make Las Lunas, and the change was coming soon. Las Lunas, barroom south of Albuquerque town. Cheddar shook the bones and threw them on the ground. Stared wide-eyed at the pattern that they made, and he said to Mary Ellen, something evil comes this way. Mary Ellen laughed, tied back her yellow hair, strapped her holster on, made clear she didn't care. Spun the chamber of her Colt revolver gun, with Shadow's eyes upon her, drunk and crazy from the sun. I haven't seen you for a long time. I haven't seen you for a while. It was a long, long time ago. A cougar sprang and knocked the stranger to the grass. He hit the ground a mile from Comanche Pass. He filled the canyon with that mountain lion scream, in the wild Indian country, in the middle of a devil's dream. Mary Ellen pricked her ears and smelled the night. That's no coyote howl, it didn't sound quite right. The August moon lit her trail bright as day, with the lights of Las Lunas dying 20 miles away. Through the moonlit night she saw Comanche Pass, saw the mountain lion that was dying in the grass. Her yellow hair was wet, the moon was in her eyes, but she saw the thing above her standing on a 10-foot rise. I haven't seen you for a long time. I haven't seen you for a while. It's been a long time. A long time since that last time. Long, long time ago. I know your name, she said, and pulled her 45. You ain't no legend, I can see you are alive. Thunder of a 6-gun rang out like a mission chime, and the church bells of Las Lunas rang out half a dozen times. I'm calm and collected. My mind is clean. I see windmills and photovoltaic cells on the village green. The clown's been supplanted. I pray that it's true. I'm so happy, I'm ecstatic. I want to share this feeling with you. But the queen is resplendent as she looks down at me from her 5-bedroom house in the land of 1,000 seas. She's strong and she is laughing at the glassware she has smashed. And in my nightmare time, I flash back to the battle days. Back to the battle days. My friends are all gathered. They're all drinking to life. A toast to Tommy and Kenny. A toast to my wife. But the clown is ascendant. He feeds off idiot fright. The planet bakes in the sun. The country dies in the night. But the queen has got this. She's intelligent and she's good. She got a figure of Roosevelt that she carved out of wood. And she's covered in glory. She's covered with snow. We'll follow her forward, but we never want to go back to the battle days. Ooh, back to the battle days. I remember how it was. Everybody remembers where they were when the whole thing crashed. And in my nightmare time, I flash back to hard times. Ooh, yeah, back to the battle days. I remember how it was.
That was Back to the Bad Old Days. And before that, we heard Oak Street Rush Hour, both from Bart Moore's new record, Graveyards, Wind, and War. And we started out with the title track of his earlier record, Curse of Las Lunas. The whole story of that song is on his website. You're going to want to check that out. All right, here is the final part of my conversation with Bart Moore. So this music is out. This record is out, both of them. The first one, Curse of Las Lunas, and Graveyards, Wind, and War. And are you out performing this stuff? Is this can people go to a club and see and hear you?
Yes. And there are dates booked. June is a little bit light because I spent so much time, getting the CD together and all the rigmarole that's surrounding that. But yeah, hopefully the summer is going to fill up with lots of dates around the area and around the state. I don't get out of Michigan too often. In fact, very rarely. But yeah, that will be filling up during the summer. I got to figure out some kind of CD release event, but that's still in the works.
So the people who want to see you are going to have to go to Michigan this summer.
That's right.
All right.
That's right. I do want to do a tour. I want to do some kind of, interstate tour, but I just don't know when. I don't know how.
Yeah. Well, it's an amazing undertaking to put something like that together. And, some people hire people to do it. It costs a lot of money. Lorena McKennett was just on the show and she said, I do all of it. Me and my assistant do all of the arrangements. So some people do it themselves, which is time consuming. Yeah. And so it's a project.
Yep. Yeah. And the folks that do that, they're all in. Music of any kind. I really think it's the old Thomas Edison, 10% inspiration, 90% perspiration. The people that do this successfully, yes, they're very good, but they work at it. They work tirelessly at it.
Now, I know that this record was put together. I know you'd been writing some of the songs before COVID, but this all happened in terms of recording and putting it together during COVID. How was that?
It actually had a fairly profound effect. And I didn't realize until kind of far into it how much of an effect it had. I started writing the material for Graveyards, Wind and War probably about a year before the pandemic. And I wrote and wrote and wrote. And then from the time I started writing through probably early 2021, the pandemic then had been there for about a year, probably, through late 2021, I was still writing the stuff. And I found that the songs were colored by just the sort of ennui and the weariness and the just weight of the whole pandemic thing, coupled with our very toxic political environment. And all these things were coloring the songs. Things came out very dystopian. And I wound up culling a lot of the material. In fact, I probably got rid of about 60% of what I wrote. I deployed Kurt Vonnegut's edict to aspiring writers, which is be utterly merciless with yourself. And so I was unreasonably hard on myself and just got rid of everything that just even had a hint of not working. The stuff still came out pretty dystopian, but not quite to the degree that it was. But those original 22, 23 tracks that I wrote, I demoed them all in a home studio where I played all the instruments and sang all the parts and ran them by a group of folks who were kind of my curators, people whose advice and influence I trust. And from that, whittled those 22 to the 9 songs that are on the final album. Went into the studio, Corey DeRouche's studio in Lansing called Troubadour, and worked with him about 6 months putting this together. And we did use outside musicians. Only one of them actually came into the studio. The others did it all pandemic style. People from across the country that I ran into one way or another contributed parts, and they had home studios and they just sent their parts electronically and we synced them up, and the wonders of modern technology. And then that whole mishmash of music that came in from hither and yon, we distilled into the 9 songs that are on the album.
And I guess that is a new genre, pandemic style.
Yeah.
Well, it came out really good. That old phrase, those who don't remember the past are doomed to repeat it. This is a good time for some stories from the past that we can learn from. So I have one last question for you. What is inspiring you these days?
Wow. I think just, as bad as things seem to be, there's energy there and there's opportunity there. there's a quote by George Orwell: as things get completely out of hand and chaos reigns, human beings out of sheer desperation turn to reasonable thought. And, I'm hoping that we can get to that point. And just trying to drive to that point is I think, what kind of keeps me going and gets me up in the morning and gets me excited.
So mote it be. Well, Bart, it's a pleasure talking with you, and really appreciate the music and what you're putting out there, in the energy of what you're putting out there.
Well, I very much appreciate you having me on. I've listened to your podcast for some time, and I'm very honored to be on the show.
Bart Moore, thank you so much for being on Paradigms, for talking with me, and for putting out this music with the thoughtfulness and the intention that you do. As we said, if you don't learn from the past, you're doomed to repeat it. Looking backwards can really help us learn about how we want to move forwards. We can see that in our own lives personally, and we can see that in our societies, in our cultures, in our countries. We must learn from the past, and it seems to me that choices that make less suffering are better, right? If you're in Michigan or going to Michigan, definitely look up Bart Moore. See if there's a show happening you can attend. I'm sure his live performances must be pretty fun. Bart Moore's website, bartmooremusic.com, BARTMOORE music.com. There's videos, lots of tracks to listen to, and like I said, some of the story of some of these songs. Check him out. Thank you, Bart. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Paradigms, and if you did, please check out our archive. We've just entered our 14th year of making shows. There are over 500 episodes in the archive, and you can access all of that at the Paradigms website, paradigms.life, and in iTunes, and wherever else you find your podcasts. Paradigms is all over the place. Paradigms has a Patreon campaign which helps pay the bills, and we really appreciate our Patreon supporters and hope that more people will become supporters. Patreon.com/paradigms. Thank you. Paradigms has recently launched a YouTube channel where you can see videos of our podcasts. Just go to YouTube and search for Paradigms Podcast. So we were talking about learning from the past. Learning means having a new experience and not being on autopilot for it, but really experiencing it and actually having your view of the world changed, either with a new skill or a new perspective. So I think we're going to have learn be the word for the week. Let's all learn. Let's be open to learning new stuff, new information, new ideas, and yes, new skills. Seems like you can't go wrong. Sometimes we learn things that disagree with our pre-existing beliefs. That can be challenging, but that's okay. What is life if not opportunity after opportunity to learn new stuff, new things, new ways of thinking to make things better for everyone? So when we learn something new and it pushes a button in us and we want to resist it, take a breath. Sometimes we learn new stuff and we decide, no, that I don't agree with that, or I don't believe that's true. But sometimes we learn new stuff and go, wow, that is something I didn't expect or wish weren't true or have to work to accept. Ancient saying, flexibility is kin of life. Rigidity is kin of death. Let's be flexible. I think we can do that, right? Okay, I'm going to leave you with one more track from Bart Moore's new record, Graveyards, Wind, and War. This is a fun track. It's called Pterodactyl, Color Wild the Sky. Enjoy. Baruch signing off for Paradigms. We'll see you next time with more inspiring people. Until then, learn. Let's learn. And be well. Take care of yourself and the people around you. All right. See you next time.
A day like this belongs in an old country song. The copper trees, the buzzing bees, hello calling crows. A distant farmer plows his field, my neighbor mows her lawn. And on the north wind rides a pterodactyl that glides. Nothing to do but bask in the leisure of this day. A ball game, some erudite talk, a course, the rough-legged hawks, but the dog barks and the billy goat jumps and the pterodactyl screams. Jays and crows make a din. They sing loud the howling wind. Gonna ride a pterodactyl, then we're gonna fly. Gonna color wild the sky. The fields and the sky, the only boundaries on my mind. The barn's decrepit while the beer flows and the trees need attention. The ghost of dead coyotes howl harmony and grace. Screech owls and rough-legged hawks make a din. They sing loud the howling wind. Gonna ride a pterodactyl, then we're gonna fly. Gonna color wild the sky. Autumn, winter passing, planet dips and turns. Pterodactyl dances while the world burns. Starlight in the Michigan night, the pterodactyl flies. She colors wild the sky. Comes a golden summer, my pterodactyl sings. That moon waxing while the crickets ring. Shot down over Mulligan Town, the pterodactyl died. She fell from the sky. Color wild the sky. Dog days of autumn, sun hanging low. Autumn leaves give way to deep freeze. The pterodactyls rest in black-eyed Susan's bed. The geese and the sandhill cranes make a din. They sing loud the howling wind. Gonna ride a pterodactyl, then we're gonna fly. Gonna color wild the sky. Autumn, winter passing, planet dips and turns. Pterodactyl dances while the world burns. Starlight in the Michigan night, the pterodactyl flies. She colors wild the sky. Comes a golden summer, my pterodactyl sings. That moon waxing while the crickets ring. Shot down over Mulligan Town, the pterodactyl died. She fell from the sky.
You've been listening to Paradigms at paradigms.life.